Let's return to this Crocket. If he was, as Johnson says, James Crocket, and if he was a significant player in the AUCHTERTYRE story, do we know anything about him? Internet searches have turned up just one Scottish James Crocket of that singular spelling and at a plausible date, born in 1695 at Tullyallen, near the town of Kincardine, Perthshire. A castle estate which is of mischievous interest only, seat of the clan Blackadder. Just typing that name conjures a mental image of Rowan Atkinson's wild red-haired Scots Blackadder cousin, Macadder.
Ah, good day, Cousin Macadder. I trust you are well?
Aye, well enough.
From available online family history records, it would seem that the Crocket family lived strictly in the Kincardine area for several generations. James's father, John Crocket, found his wife only a couple of miles from home in Culross, pronounced, I'm reliably informed, Curus. Aside, should we attempt to deduce anything from his wife's maiden name being the same as his mother's? If the Tullyallen Crocket is the Crocket of our tune, then it might be significant that there is an AUCHTERTYRE a mere 15 miles from his home, and which, stretching one's imagination, could be said to have BRAES in its vicinity. That might have been a significant link between the place name, its BRAES, and the tune, but it seems to be a mere coincidence. Since Crocket never called the tune he wrote down the BRAES of AUCHTERTYRE, I think we'd be wise to discount the role of this sterling AUCHTERTYRE in our quest. We still have 5 more available for consideration, and if we relax our over-optimistic attachment to this AUCHTERTYRE, one of the others in particular, not far away, seems a lot more likely. There are at least 6 AUCHTERTYREs in Scotland. These days 2 are spelt with an O in place of the initial AU, but old maps spell them all the same way, AUCHTERTYRE. AUCHTERTYRE means the farm considered number 1 in the area. Indeed, all except one, a stately home with an estate of several farms, are just that, farms. 2 AUCHTERTYREs are on flat land. They are braeless and may be discounted, while the sterling one now seems equally unlikely. Additionally, I have found no evidence that might implicate the Argyll or Loch Alsh AUCHTERTYREs, where there surely are BRAES. All of the admittedly circumstantial evidence, therefore, takes us irrevocably in the direction of AUCHTERTYRE House, a grand mansion near Crieff, where Scottish music will have been an everyday feature of social life for the well-to-do Murray family. We have no reason to conclude that any of the 6 extant AUCHTERTYREs, bar the one remaining on the map, is the AUCHTERTYRE referred to in the tune title. Numerous items of admittedly circumstantial evidence, mostly musical, indicate but do not prove that it is most likely the Crieff, Perthshire AUCHTERTYRE, the seat of the Murray clan. The grand mansion perches not particularly high on a 30-metre ridge, exaggerated here, with rolling braes, these days grouse moors, as a distant backdrop, not the rugged peaks depicted in this over-romanticised 1831 print. The building inhabited by the Murrays of this story, which might have been quite castle-like in the day, was demolished in the 1780s to make way for the late Georgian house shown here. Music, song and dancing would have been routine in entertainments at AUCHTERTYRE House. Numerous pieces were dedicated to, one or more possibly composed by, 2 young ladies of the family, Euphemia Emilia Murray, 1769 to 1845, cousin of the Laird Sir William Murray, and Augusta Murray, 1777 to 1846, his daughter. It is possible that musical items were composed by one of the Miss Murrays. Frustratingly, where we have an indication of such an important factor in this history, the first name isn't provided, so we can't tell which Miss Murray. But there is just one more hint by which we might cautiously extrapolate our speculations. Duncan Macara's 1881 History of the Crieff area contains an informative biography of local fiddler John Cuthbert, 1778 to 1857, wherein he tells us about activities at AUCHTERTYRE House at this time. Macara wrote, "The sound of revelry by night was the fashion, and births, birthdays, christenings, marriages and visits were all celebrated by the necessary rounds of feasting and dancing. The lairds mingled with the tenantry and did not disdain a hooligan with them. Often the laird was best man at a tenant's wedding." Renowned Perthshire fiddler Neil Gow, 1727 to 1807, and his older brother Donald, cello, appeared frequently at such entertainments. This wedding scene features those very gentlemen. Neil Gow's son Nathaniel, 1763 to 1831, was also a dance band musician and the publisher of extensive repositories of Scottish dance music, which included the BRAES of AUCHTERTYRE, now playing in the background. Macara continues, "It was at one of these weddings that Cuthbert had the good fortune to come into contact with Sir William Murray of AUCHTERTYRE, that is, the cousin of one Miss Murray and the father of the other. The music having attracted the laird's attention, the musician was ever after employed by the family as long as he was able to play, being a period of nearly 60 years. So apart from the Bowie brothers, who played on occasion at AUCHTERTYRE, and possibly even a Gow or two, Cuthbert was the main fiddler there." Then Macara goes on to pique our interest with an almost useful fact. The then Miss Murray of AUCHTERTYRE was a famous musician and composer. Many of her pieces will be found in the musical repositories published by Nathaniel Gow. Splendid, but there won't be very much to go on. While we don't have many of Miss Murray's pieces in Gow, well, I can't find them, we do have one from Book 5, Rosabelle, labelled, composed and communicated by Miss Murray of AUCHTERTYRE. There is just a chink of additional information implicit in Macara's description, though it's very little to go on. He calls this composer the then Miss Murray. Presumably both were quite young when music making at AUCHTERTYRE, both prefixed Miss. But among the titles of other tunes dedicated to them, Augusta appears once as Lady, no longer Miss Augusta Murray. Does the then signify a change of title at a later date? Actually, she's named Augustus, but I suspect an uncorrected engraving error. These mistakes do happen, such as here in Rosabelle. It sounded terrible when I first began transcribing it, until I noticed the errors. Corrected, it turned out to be delightful. But which Miss Murray was the famous musician and composer? Truly, we're still no wiser. Let's have a look at the music that has Miss Murray or AUCHTERTYRE or both in the title. Because she occurs less prominently in the records, let's deal with Augusta Murray first. She would have been aged about 9 on the publication of Bowie's book, and of course would have been living at her parental home. It is in this title that we encounter Augusta Murray a second time in MacDonald's Strathspey collection. At this publication date, she would have been aged 22, now bearing the title Lady. That's all we can assign to Augusta, just 2 pieces of music, presumably written for and dedicated to her. As well as having several portraits of the other Miss Murray, we also have more information. Euphemia Emilia Murray was apparently known as the Flower of Strathmore. She was 18 when, in 1787, a poet named Robert Burns visited AUCHTERTYRE, and while there, evidently smitten with the lovely young Pheme, he wrote a song for her. Lithe, blithe and merry was she. That's the tune he found for it, playing in the background. Of the song he recalled,
I composed these verses while I stayed at AUCHTERTYRE with Sir William Murray. The lady, his cousin, who was also at AUCHTERTYRE at the same time, was a well-known toast, Miss Euphemia Murray of Lintrose.
Miss Murray of Lintrose. Splendid! Now at least we know that the Miss Murray of this tune title was Euphemia. It seems likely that John Bowie, one of the fiddlers hired to entertain at AUCHTERTYRE, was the tune's composer. Note that we are told the intended instrumentation of 2 violins and bass, which was most likely the cello. So here's a dance we can be pretty confident would have been played at an AUCHTERTYRE house ball. Was composed by one of the musicians whose band performed it on the instrumentation specified, and at long last the identity of the dedicatee. Oh, why didn't Bowie name the composer of Miss Murray Lintrose, as Gow did at the top of this, Bowie's Miss Murray of AUCHTERTYRE's Strathspey? And why didn't Gow, the publisher, specify which Murray? Most inconsiderate of future historians. Violin and cello, the instrumental combination famously favoured by the Gow family musicians, would seem to be appropriate here. When transcribing these tunes, I didn't much care for Bowie's Miss Murray AUCHTERTYRE. That was until I discovered it performed by Concerto Caledonia on their recording Nathaniel Gow's Dance Band, track 22. They really bring it to life, putting my computer to shame and Miss Murray, whichever of them, credibly back in the Georgian Scottish ballroom. And finally, among the AUCHTERTYRE Murray tunes, here's another about which we can't be certain which Murray was the dedicatee, even if it is she of AUCHTERTYRE. Maybe that shouldn't matter, because as printed, it's nonsense. I haven't worked out what the publisher Campbell's engraver did wrong when transcribing it. Was he tired, drunk, or just being naughty? But as it is, it sounds truly awful. Even the tune on its own is pretty meaningless. Enough! Should we doubt that Pitthieveless Castle, if that's how it's pronounced, a Strathspey by the Miss Murray, is from the hand that composed Rosabelle, and that she is, or might well be, Euphemia Murray? My source, the Petrucci Online Music Library, attributes the piece to Euphemia, who must surely be the AUCHTERTYRE Euphemia Murray. But according to what evidence? I can find none, but this attribution hints that somebody might know. So many hints all through the Murray saga, but precious little evidence with which to construct a watertight case. If we need some alternative circumstantial evidence, then we have two items of interest. Firstly, Thomas Edwards provides it in his Strathearn lyrics. Auchtertyre with an O is in that valley, Strathearn, and gets a mention in 3 of the poems. In Song of the Zephyr and the Lasso Auchtertyre, its occurrence provides no historically useful information. 1889 is too late for his Lass of Auchtertyre to have been one of our Miss Murrays, but in his epic The Knock of Crieff he refers most helpfully to the wooded braes of classic Auchtertyre. Note that knock, K-N-O-C-K, is from the Gaelic C-N-O-C, meaning a hillside, or brae. And second, Dundee's Seymour Lodge Girls' School was, between 1939 and 1966, located at Auchtertyre House. A poem survives from that time, presumably written out, perhaps composed by a pupil. Once again, we are provided with a credible opinion that the braes of Auchtertyre were rather bonny, probably worthy of a Strathspey tune. It has been persuasively argued by, for instance, the American fiddler Brandon Vance, that the braes of Auchtertyre found its way from Scotland to North America, during which journey it evolved, producing related but distinctly different tunes, Billy in the Lowlands and Billy in the Low Ground. Brandon's fine performances of all 3 tunes, accompanied by his discussion in the video, made absolutely certain that I didn't overlook these at first apparent outliers.
So I want you to listen carefully to these next 2 tunes. The first one is called Billy in the Lowlands, and the second one's called Billy in the Low Ground. It's an early version of an American tune called Billy in the Low Ground. And listen for the similarities to that Strathspey that I just played for you. Of the 2 American tunes, I find Billy in the Low Ground the more persuasive, and these days it's everywhere. It's very popular in bluegrass and Appalachian step or back dancing, a sort of on-the-spot clog dancing that adds a marvellous rhythmic quality to the music.
The tune has evolved further and is now much more American than the original Scottish Strathspey. If that is where it began, I can barely tell now, but it's definitely none the worse for that. Now that we're into derivatives, here is one of my favourites. Back in Scotland, and still the BRAES of AUCHTERTYRE, the tune soon becomes elaborated into variations that take it forward while retaining its basic structure. I've had a go at making the bass line a little more interesting. As the project matured, a quite astonishing set of variations on the BRAES of AUCHTERTYRE turned up, languishing in a museum in Sydney, Australia. The publishing date is not known, but the engraved print looks 18th century. Who was the young lady? Dare we hazard that it's the work of a Miss Murray who might also have composed Rosabelle and Pithivilis Castle? Better not. To a mere woodwind player this looks and sounds fiendishly difficult, a lot more advanced than Pithivilis Castle and particularly challenging for an amateur to play. One is led to speculate that the composer was an accomplished pianist, and if she was Euphemia Murray, then what? And if Augusta? We just don't know. Let's speculate while we listen. Here once again is my current evolution diagram that attempts to explain the ancestry of the BRAES of AUCHTERTYRE, ready as always for revision.